Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Fitfam podcast. This is Hilary, Miss Natural Olympia.
And this is Doug, the Formulator.
And so today is actually a podcast that Hilary thought of and thought was really, really cool.
So I loved the concept last week when we were surrounded by things. It's a joke with Doug that anytime we travel anywhere, I have like 19 bags all around me as we travel. I like to be in this little cocoon. So I thought, why not just do that all the time and be surrounded by our favorite things? But this week we are talking about our favorite books and how they've inspired us. And I know that I always love to hear when a book is something that changed somebody or it, initiated some change or inspired somebody to do something or even opened up the door of thinking about a subject in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And you hear about you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around and your environment, and all that's true. But actually, I love to ask people what their favorite books are and find out if they read or not. And you can really tell a lot about someone, and not to offend anyone, but actually the success of people in different areas. Like, honestly, if you want to be successful in any area, you really should read. And I know nowadays you can watch YouTube, things like that,
and like
but
podcasts.
it's about knowledge.
Yeah.
And so when we say books, we could be whether it's digital, whether it's audio, but it's about gaining knowledge, and it's so important to life. I think it's one of just the key aspects to have continued growth and being able to, in a low-cost way, have mentors.
Totally agreed. I also feel like reading is kind of a lost art. Even I know reading for knowledge is really important, but let's just talk about reading in general, reading for even entertainment, but the process of putting eyes to paper and actually reading isn't always something that people do nowadays. And I think it allows, I heard something this morning, I was listening to something by Alex Ramosi, and he was saying that nobody ever allows their mind to stop and to be bored. And I think when you open up a book, your mind isn't constantly bombarded by all of the media, that your mind opens up. So I think creativity expands when we read.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite things is I dream about like sitting underneath a palm tree at the ocean reading. Like, that's actually one of my thoughts I have a lot of times about, what do I want to accomplish or where do I want to go? And I don't know if I've actually done that exact thing yet, but that's something I've always thought of, that what a great place of just being present and enjoying, nature and reading. And so
You've been on a beach with a book many a time. I do.
so I think
Anyways.
that what we did is we picked our top 6 books.
I might have more
and
than 6,
you
but
might have more
I'll be
6.
quick.
But what I didn't do is I started getting overwhelmed because of all the books, and we have bookcases everywhere. And so for me, it was like, I'm not going to pick the health books. We'll do that at another time. And I've got 3 that I'm writing right now anyways. And so that's going to be some of my top, and I didn't want to talk about those. But so these are, in my 6, not health related. They're just life, business, goal setting, top 6.
Okay, so I love that. Disclaimer from me though, I have not always been a book reader. Being married to this guy has initiated a lot of that. When I was younger, my sister would read Mary Higgins Clark books, and they were mystery books, and so I would every once in a while read those. But so that's kind of a disclaimer. It's something I think you can also grow into and grow to love.
Good
I
point.
don't think everybody might initially love to read, but the more you read, I think the more you do enjoy it. So
Okay, let's
let's
go.
get going.
Once you start with your first one, then I'll go, and then you.
Okay, this is kind of funny because I don't remember a lot from the book, but it was a catalyst to the concept of fear being okay and moving forward even in fear. So the name of the book is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways, and it's by Susan Jeffers.
PhD.
And the reason I loved this book is it's the first time that I was introduced to the victim mentality, and then also taking ownership for your own life and your own choices. And I read this book for the first time at a very, very difficult time in my life, in our life. And it helped me to do some really hard things that were asked of me. So I don't remember a ton about this book, but I do remember it helping me getting through really tough situations.
And feel the fear and doing it anyways is really cool, because just the way she writes, it's like, hey, here's the facts. You just, your fear is something that holds you back, and it leads you a lot of times to inaction, like not doing anything.
Yeah,
And that was a big thing, I think, with you, is just take action.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. If you're waiting for the fear to go away before you take action, you'll never take any action.
Absolutely.
So, anyways.
And so let's go. I'm going to start off with one that most people don't know about. This is one that was transformational to me. And I'm really big, into frequencies, and been in the game of being around people in the positive affirmation world and just self-help world and all that. And there's this group of books that, everyone talks about. But this is one that's not in that normal group. And so it's a little gem that I recommend to everyone. It's called Beyond Positive Thinking, and it's by Dr. Robert Anthony. Beyond Positive Thinking by Dr. Robert Anthony. And the cool thing about this book is it really lays out the concept of positive thinking's good, but that's just like the very beginning, and that it requires recognizing certain things in your life and breaking through barriers, kind of like facing the fear, right? Feel the fear and going through it anyways. And it takes you deeper into the human psyche, and it's just very transformational, especially when it comes to things that, we take for granted. Like we think, okay, well, yeah, I want to earn a great living for my family, or I want to make a certain amount of money, or I want good health. And we think that we're wanting those things, but truly at the core level, are we truly doing the things that are necessary to create that transformational thought process, the one that puts the energy out in the universe so that you get back those things. You actually get back the opportunities and the things to be able to accomplish great health, the finances, relationships. And so Beyond Positive Thinking, little gem for all of you that are into book reading that maybe don't know about it. Bam.
I love that. So will you do me a favor as I'm mentioning this one? Will you get on your phone and look up the compound effect, the compounding penny? Will you look at that? Okay. So my next book, this is so funny too. We've had bazillion copies of this book.
We bought it for our entire office.
In the office, at home. Our kids have this book, and I could not find even one copy of this book, which is just mind-blowing. So
tells you how popular it is.
Everybody hoards it. Yeah. So the book is called The Compound Effect, and it is by Darren Hardy. And this book was transformational for me when I was beginning my bodybuilding career, or trying to understand the concept of consistency. And one of the things that I loved about this book is that he gives the analogy of an old-time well, and how you have to pump. And you have to pump for a good long time because the water's trying to get there, and it has to make its way. The pressure is building and it has to come. And it's like the exact same concept of when we're trying to get our health in order, or trying to hit a goal with how we look aesthetically, or a weight loss goal, or anything. And we think we're working so hard and it takes so long. And some people give up right when the water's at the very top of the spout, it's just ready to shoot out, and all of the results are right there, but they give up before it happens. And then what happens? They let up pressure, right? They start pumping so hard, and the water falls back down. And then all of a sudden you have to pump really hard. But what happens when you keep pumping and you keep pumping hard? Well, all of a sudden the water just starts coming out, and you no longer have to pump as hard because the momentum is there. So Darren Hardy talks about big momentum, and getting momentum on your side.
I love that book for that. And when I read that in Compound Effect, I started crying, because I remember growing up, my dad took me down to the Hughes' farm here at the base of Mount Graham and taught me that with an actual pump, with an actual well pump, and pumping, and getting tired and starting to, get upset, and just said to keep going. But then once it started coming, had to do very little effort. And it's so true. Relationships, true with finances, but, recently you've seen that, because, Hilary was working so hard all these years, and great success, but just this year, taking it that extra 10%, that extra effort, And now her metabolism is taken off, and we're like trying to like keep up with it. Like it's like the craziest thing. And because it's just flowing. And that's so true. Like, don't give up on eating healthy and doing things because after a while it just takes off and you're able to,
You're
in my
able to
case,
feel the effects.
yeah, you're able to have more treat meals once in a while. Your metabolism is going so fast. And, but same thing. Yeah. Money, relationships, all that. You want me?
In just a second. So I'm going to have you read that in just a second. It also was the first time that I heard all winners are trackers. So tracking what you're doing will help you to succeed more because you can then go back and see where you're at.
Data.
Data. Exactly. Doug loves the data. Consistency is the key to achieving and maintaining momentum. Life begins outside the edge of your comfort zone. Those are all things. And then so there's two more things, and then I'll have you read the penny thing about this book. You can tell I really, really love this book.
Compound Effect, Darren Hardy.
Compound Effect, Darren Hardy. So it's also the first time that I had a light bulb go off that was like, we're all different. And some of us are, when the water is cold in a pool, some of us are run and jump in and experience it all at once and allow the big, nasty feeling to overcome you and just go through it and be great. Some of us are toe dippers and some of us need to go a step at a time. And I love the concept of being okay with both or either. And at different times in your life, you're one or the other, and different circumstances, you're one or the other. So that analogy was like mind blowing to me.
That's why we work so good too, because sometimes I want to jump into, I've had like 49 businesses. So he'll go, why don't we take it a little bit
Just one
easy
step
and
at a
see how
time.
things flow?
Hey, Doug. Okay.
And then anyways.
Okay. And then the other thing that he said was about enemies. And I've always had this constant battle of like, okay, trying to be this good person, really good person, no enemies, that kind of thing. And I loved what he said. He said, enemies give us a reason to stand tall with courage. Having to fight challenges your skill, your character, and your resolve. It forces you to assess and exercise your talents and abilities. Without a motivating fight, we become fat and lazy. We lose our strength and our purpose. So it's the first time that I really heard it's okay to look at things as an enemy, even if it's not an enemy. He kind of says like David had Goliath.
Michael Jordan had Larry Bird.
Exactly. And he just goes through all of these scenarios. So I thought that was really cool.
It is. And, back to even the athletic world, I got to experience that. I remember the stories being there when, Michael Jordan playing, that always talk about how his teammates would make things up about the opposite team. Even if they weren't true. Did you know what he said about your mother and different things, or about your game, like you can't rebound and all this, and he'd go crazy. So we started doing that a lot with players that just needed that edge.
Yeah.
And like some days they'd have great games and others not, and we would come up with those. And we would remember one time we did that with Dan Marley, and it was the night he set the record in the NBA for the most threes, saying that he was overrated with threes and so on, and they were playing another team that had a great three-point shooter out of Utah. And it was just interesting how you can do that in normal life. And it doesn't have to be someone you don't like, but it's something that's your competition. And you think about that and it drives you. And the whole key is whatever it takes to be able to drive you to be disciplined.
Yes.
And sometimes that works for people.
Yeah, sometimes that works. So the compounding penny is just an example how sometimes it doesn't take these massive leaps for you to make massive changes in your life. Sometimes it's the very tiny steps you take day in and day out that will make the most change in your life.
And I think that in the book, he talks about it where, like, would you rather have $1 million or one penny compounded over 30 days? And,
exactly.
One penny, then two, then four, then eight, then 16, that type thing. And most people take the $1 million.
Give me the $1 million, a penny.
But over 30 days, if you compound a penny, it would be $5,368,709.12. So you would actually make, $5 million instead of $1 million.
But it's not until when? The 27th day that it really starts to compound?
Yeah, like, day 25, 26, 27, you're 200,000, like 400,000.
So it's the same
few days.
Yeah, it's the same concept about like pumping the well. It's like if you will just stay true, stay strong, stay committed, eventually it makes a massive difference. So that book is just
cool.
Freaking cool.
My turn?
Your turn.
Let's see what's next. What is next? Okay, boom. This is a a new book in the arsenal, to us anyways, because I really like classics. I think a lot of times with motivation and things like that, a lot of the new books are just like rewriting of the same thing. And but this one, phenomenal. Atomic Habits, James Clear. I've spoke to a lot of even my mentors in that's in this space saying that this book changed their life. I mean, so it's changed a lot of the lives, even at the highest level of discipline in the world. And one of the neat things about Atomic Habits is just being able to focus on the small habits and being consistent with them in every day. And that if you just focus on one little habit and make that change, but make it completely. In other words, instead of doing all these great big changes that you might do for a short time, that you make that one change consistently, like working out. I'd rather you work out for 5 minutes a day than 2 hours and then you're off for a week because you're so sore and all that. And then the next week, 6 minutes, and then 7 minutes. And eventually you're going to get to where you're, okay, I can do this and I can sustain it. And so I'm just going to stay here. And you keep doing that until you can do a little bit more. But Atomic Habits, about what you do on the daily, are habits. Like we all have habits. You just need to look at what you're doing on the daily to see if the things that you're doing are going to lead to positive benefit or not. If not, go back and make tiny changes, but they create remarkable results. And I just love that. And I know that it was a game changer for us. We read it. We had our family read it. We gave it to friends. In my office, one of my little cubbies is a bunch of these. Depending on who comes to my office, I'll actually give them a copy of Atomic Habits. It's that powerful to us. And what was some of the takeaways from it for you?
Man, Atomic Habits is a hard one for me to remember. Was that about habit stacking?
Yeah, habit stacking.
I think habit stacking was a big one. You know, if you have one habit down, stack another habit on top of it, so that you just can kind of compound those effects.
Absolutely, that was real positive. Great book, Atomic Habits. You could stand up. We could stay all this podcast and for days on quotes from that book. But I think the best thing to do is just have it be one of those that you put an Audible or you read. I'd recommend you read it because there's a lot of things you'll underline and highlight.
And I just want to mention, this is not something that I've always practiced and I still don't always do it, but it is a really good habit that Doug actually taught me. And the first time that you're going through and reading a book, just read it. Don't try to highlight anything. I mean, if you need to like bend a page because something made an impact, bend the page. But your first time, just read it. And then next time, go through it again and mark up the book and the things, highlight it, and the things that really spoke to you and meant a lot to you. But I really like that because the first time you read it, it can just be about being in the moment and being present and absorbing and not trying to make it something it isn't or trying to make it bigger than it is. And then going back through it and be like, oh, that was profound. And highlighting. So I like that you do that.
And then the third.
Who taught you that?
And this is the third. One of my mentors, Dr. Ashmead.
Cool.
And so, but it's 3, the power of 3. And so you read it fully. Don't underline anything like Hilary said. The next time you highlight, but you read it all the way through and just highlight. But then the third time you go back and just read the highlights and commit those as much as you can to memory. Ponder them, think about those, and it will change your life versus just book after book after book. And you hear people, I read, 20 books this year. Well, they don't remember anything. And for me, my age, I used to think I had a photographic memory, like I truly believed that. And then as I got older, I'm like, I really don't even come close to that now. Like it gets harder to memorize. And so following that habit really makes a huge difference and a huge impact.
I 100% agree. But I do want to say, I think some books aren't meant to change us forever. Some books are to catapult us to the next level, and they did their job. We don't have to like have this laundry list of things that we need to take away from the book and now apply, although some books are that way. But some are just there to make us enlighten us.
That's true. And some are also there to read again. All of a sudden you're like, man, I don't remember that about the book. You're a different place in life. You're vibrating at a different frequency, and so you get something new from it. It's kind of like the Bible, right? It's one of the great things about the Bible, the way it's written in a lot of scripture, is that it'll appeal to whoever is reading it at their level. And so next time you read
at their time.
And so super important to the books that you love. have it, go back and read them. Sometimes like, oh yeah, it was good then and that, and other times like, wow, that's some, more in-depth knowledge on that subject that didn't hit me that way before, because your frequency is different and the frequency of those remarks come to you at the level you're at.
Awesome. My next one, Miracle in the Andes. So
I didn't know you picked that one.
yeah. So I love a good story of intense obstacles that someone has overcome that make them almost heroic, the fact that they were able to get through it. And Miracle in the Andes is that. It's all about a rugby team that crashed in a plane that crashes, true story, crashes in the Andes. And they were on this mountain for 72 days. 72 days. And it's just the story about those that survived. It's also the story about those that passed away and what it took to survive this crazy, crazy, horrible crash. So Miracle in the Andes, you might need a strong stomach for this one's.
Like when they're eating other people.
Stop! Oh. Don't do that. I don't know if people have seen. Stop! Don't do that, Doug. Vaho, take all of that part out. For all of it from this, all of that goes out, Vaho. Gosh. Anyways, swear. So there's also a movie I think that was made. I don't know that I've seen it alive, and I don't know how well that movie follows the book or not.
It did. It was pretty decent, but we both liked
the book. Miracle in the Andes is a good one.
And
The Human Spirit.
That one's easy to get into, and like in your mind, you're like right there.
Oh, it transports
It's written
you
really well, and you do like. You're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm in the plane in the snow and, they're out of food. It was really powerful. So good pick. I wouldn't have picked that one, but it was very powerful about what's possible.
Yes. Yes. What you can overcome if you choose to live.
Yeah, absolutely. Super good.
Super good.
Good job.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. You ready? All time, number one, without question. You have to minus your religious scriptures and books like that, but on top of the list, like there isn't any. I mean, there's some that might be a little bit close to it, but this is the Big Daddy. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So this is the first self-help book I ever read, and I read it at a time that was so perfect. I was a teenager. I knew I wanted to be in business, and my dad was teaching me little lessons, and I was kind of going through a lot. And I read this book, and it totally transformed my life. I really do not think that I'd have been successful at being an entrepreneur and in business if it wasn't for this book. It did everything. And so basically, Napoleon Hill spent over 20 years of his life researching and the people that are most successful and interviewing them. A lot of you know the story. And he went back and he created 13 actionable items that you should do in order to be successful. And I brought this one because there's like 100 different versions of the book, right? This is the best version. This book has a foreword by Russell Brunson. And we were just in Florida a few weeks ago at a conference, and Russell Brunson is invested millions into saving the Napoleon Hill Foundation to keep the spirit alive of Napoleon Hill and all his works. And he's found writings that weren't published, and he's helping to publish it. Just philanthropist, phenomenal. But Russell wrote the foreword to this, and it's kind of cool because it's someone now in our day that's followed those principles, letter of the law, that went from nothing as a wrestler, Russell Brunson, all the way up to being a billionaire, and just now really helping the world with all kinds of things.
How cool is that?
Underground Railroad and all that stuff. But anyways, one point about this I want to make is there's so many, like truly we could just do a whole bunch of podcasts on this book. But the thing that probably transformed my life the most from this book was about the importance of a mastermind team, because I was sitting there thinking, well, I'm not an expert in this area or this area and this area. And the book was, you don't have to be. And the story that was profound with that was talking about Henry Ford and how Henry Ford was actually taken to trial for making the internal combustion engine. You remember he made the automobile, and he was put on the stand and they were jumping on his case and making him, how lawyers are the worst. And they were like making him all feel bad. And like, he was, who are you to have this engine that, could blow up? And like, it was really different from, buggy and that to have an engine and a car. And, he got real frustrated and he just slammed his fist down um, there on the stand and just said, hey, look, if you come into my office, I've got a desk and it has a bunch of buttons on it. And you can ask me a question. You can ask me a question about the internal combustion engine and the physics behind it. And I won't know the answer, but I'll push a button and a PhD in that area will come and answer your question. I don't have to know all the answers, but I have to surround myself with those who do. And it just like, and so he teaches you to create a mastermind team and put a team together of the best minds and the things that you're not the best at. Focus on one thing and be the very best, but then surround yourself and have that team. And that's what I did and created our company. And we had those experts and it just was transformed.
You see how emotional I get? Because that's like one of the getting emotional. That's one of the first examples that you gave me to overcome, my fear of not knowing the answers to every question when we're dealing with our awesome clients or our, customers here at OHS or whatever. I felt like this need to have every answer always. And Doug gives the example of Henry Ford. And for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, wow. There are amazing people that did amazing things and created, and, they didn't have every single answer. They just would get it. They would find it and be confident that they could find it. So I love that.
And a lot of people run around with that whole fraud syndrome, right? Like, who am I to help people in these areas? And it holds them back. And I think that was in your case, right? Our concierge clients love Hilary and they love what she brings to the table. And it was hard for her to break through that, like you mentioned. And then when you just like owned that and realize, even if we have to say, I'm not sure that answer, but we'll get with you on it because we have thousands of doctors. We have people that, that we can go to get the answer. Super good. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, the Russell Brunson edition.
Okay. He didn't know I was going to do this. Okay. Let me just say, I love this fitness book because it breaks down nutrition and the concept of holistic nutrition so well and so easily and makes it so easy to understand. One thing that Doug is really good at is breaking things down to make it really understandable. He always says, he always uses the term kindergarten level, which is kind of derogatory. I mean, that's not really nice to say, but it just makes it so easy to understand. And I love our fitness acronym: focused, intense thought, nutrition, exercise, specific supplementation. And this book kind of breaks it down that way. And then it also breaks down to understand macronutrients and where you get your different macronutrients from which foods, that kind of thing. So Fitness was a really good one. This is an old copy, and we're redoing that copy.
Yeah, so don't go buy Optimal Fitness right now. This was way back quite a few years ago, and we are redoing Optimal Fitness, and so I'm really excited about being able to bring that to the table.
Can I just mention something in this? Sure. This is hilarious. My sister even gave a little, what is that called?
A little testimonial
at the age of 20, and my sister is now 45, I think. So.
Wrote that a little while.
I should tell you. Well, anyways, that was great.
Yeah, so Optimal Fitness, I thank you for sharing that, but it's the holistic approach to health that basically, if you want to know Optimal Fitness before the new book comes out, it's our concierge training, it's our doctors, it's our company, it's being holistic, but having a system for you to follow. So you just have to follow the system and you can get great results.
Right. And how important is it to really have the understanding of what is truly holistic, what is truly the best way for me to eat, the mindset, what supplements are, and it goes through all of it, and it's amazing. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. This is probably next to Think and Grow Rich, the most transformational book, at least for sure lately. Like, this has been the biggest change in the last, 3 or 4 years for sure. In my life, our company, like, we basically took our whole company and based it off of principles in this book. And so I just love it. This book is called F.I.T.N.E.S.S is Easier Than 2X. And it was written by Dan Sullivan, but mainly from Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And the concept of the book, F.I.T.N.E.S.S is easier than 2X, like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But you got to read the book. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And it's basically the truth that if you really focus in on a goal, like a 10x goal, like, be able to accomplish a great thing, and you eliminate everything else, all this stuff.
Every other distraction.
Yeah.
and every other, not distraction, but
Even good thing.
nuance. Even good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're just not getting a lot of growth from it. And you
Zero in.
only do the things that create huge growth, then it's actually easier because now you've limited, instead of doing 30 things, you're doing 3, but you focus on those. And I just love it. I highly recommend this book to you. But the thing that was really interesting from 10x is easier than 2x, one of the great examples from that. And I recommend you also follow Dr. Benjamin Hardy on YouTube. He's now really putting a lot of great, 5-minute, 10-minute
Oh, they're
things out
so
on
good.
YouTube. And
They're
that
so
way you
good.
can just catch up on it. He's a concierge client of ours now too. And it's an honor to work with him and help him reach his optimal health goals, 10x's health goals. But one of the things that he says is like, let's say that you needed to earn $100,000 by the end of next month, okay, or within like 3 months, and it could be anything. It's not just money; it could be your health, it can be relationships, it can be anything. But just with money, you had to earn 100,000 more dollars than you would normally earn. Uh, let's say 90 days, okay, the next 90 days. What would you do? And the first thing you do is decide there's no way. And so that's the mindset, that it's not possible. No, you have no choice, right? You have to do it or else, your kids are going to be taken away or some crazy thing like that. And then you're like, okay, well, if I had to, I would do X. And then you say, okay, you would do this. Now let's start eliminating everything and creating a plan so you can just do that. You can focus on that one thing. And it's really, really neat. And I'm the poster boy of 2X, meaning good, consistent growth. We're improving and all of that, but not really been the 10X guy, like these quantum leaps. And it's just really changing everything. Love it. Thanks, Dr. Hardy. Woo.
Love it. Okay, this next one is The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. And it says The 7 Decisions That Determine Personal Success. This book is great if you do not love to read, but you love to be entertained. Because this book, it's a fiction book, but it has all of these principles based upon this gentleman's life. It starts out just explaining this gentleman's life and how things are just kind of crumbling in his life. And he has kind of the victim mentality, right? And he basically, maybe a dream, goes back and he meets with different people throughout history that teach him these massive lessons. And so it's such a cool concept to teach these 7 principles.
Who was your favorite person he met?
Oh, goodness gracious. There's a few. Columbus was really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who's yours?
Probably like Abraham Lincoln.
Did he do Abraham Lincoln?
Does he do Abraham Lincoln?
Oh yeah, he does do it. Okay. All right. So here are the 7 decisions. So this is also something that's kind of cool. You can download the different decisions, and I'm not going to read all of them because they are really long, but it basically goes into how you're going to, he talks about reading them daily. And so my son loved this book and I loved this book. So we had these laminated so that we could read them daily. I think my son even laminated and then had him in his shower so they could read. He doesn't mess around. If he's committed, he's committed. Thank you, Braven. You inspire your parents all the time. So basically, like decision 1 is the responsible decision. The buck stops here. And I'm just going to give a little paragraph from the beginning. It says, from this moment forward, I will accept responsibility for my past. I understand that the beginning of wisdom is to accept the responsibility for my own problems, and that by accepting responsibility for my past, I free myself to move into a bigger, brighter future of my own choosing. I love not being a victim, and I still have problems with acting like a victim. So these are so cool. So decision 1, the responsible decision, the buck stops here. Decision 2, I will seek wisdom. Decision 3, the active decision, I am a person of action. Decision 4, the certain decision, I have a decided heart. Decision 5, the joyful decision, today I will choose to be happy. Decision 6, the compassionate decision, I will greet this day with a forgiving spirit. And then decision 7, the persistent decision, I will persist without exception. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal book.
And I love the way that book's written. He
Same.
writes a lot like Dan Brown that I'll get to in a minute, but I love that. In fact, we're working on one kind of with that theme with it, right? The Babylon, Escape from Babylon, but a great because it's easy to transport yourself to the book in like a traveler's gift and things like that and be present. I always pictured myself in each of those things when he'd go and visit Solomon or different people.
But
it's really cool.
It's that, but it's also very easy to resonate with him at the beginning of the book, feeling like this victim and nothing is his fault. These things keep happening to him and he made all the right choices, and yet all of these negative things keep happening to him. But by the end, he realizes
Everything's
you made your choices and you get to accept responsibility for all of it, which opens you up to the potential of how amazing your future can be. Love it.
Love it. All right. And so let me talk about the other Benja Hardy book, and you can go to this one.
Okay,
So,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's 3 books by Dr. Hardy that are really great, and it's a series. And so it's funny that we chose all 3 of them. And we'll talk about, depending on where you're at in life will depend on which book really resonates with you. 10X is easier than 2X resonated with me at an extremely high level immediately. It's like I'm changing everything, the way we do our business. We took all of our employees, our staff members, and we started following it, and it was like transformational, and it wasn't for Hilary.
And I stopped reading it immediately because it ticked me off big time. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah,
right?
And it was cool because once we brought on Darren Hardy as a concierge client, we met him in Utah, and we're, onboarding him and doing all the blood tests and everything, and we're talking and that, and we mentioned that, that I love it, that I'm, changing so much, and Hilary was like, yeah, but,
I just wasn't
not
ready.
to offend you, but it's not.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for it.
And what did he tell you? Well, he told her to read another book she'll tell you about in a minute. But the middle book was The Gap in the Game. And we both liked this book, and that was interesting. We both liked it. I liked it a lot, but it wasn't as transformational for me. I was like, okay, well, I got that. I understand that. And I could see it being very powerful. There's people in our life that this was absolutely the most transformational book for
Gap
them.
in the Game.
And The Gap in the Game really just talks about how many times in life that you're in that gap, right, in between good and great, and you just kind of float there. And it's really important to understand that you identify where you're at and what you need to do to be able to make that progress.
Well, and not living in the gap, but looking at the gain that you're in instead of looking at the gap between where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah, and that's a good point, is that I know that when I first started in business that it was that way, is never being satisfied. Like, hey, I want more. And it's okay to continuously want growth as long as you're also happy in the moment and see where you're at. Or to even look in the moment and say, oh, I could be better, but in a positive mindset. So Gap in the Game, great book. And that's the second in the trilogy. 10X is easier than 2X is the latest book. I think it's kind of like the top of the heap. Gap in the Game, like they're really understanding about the importance of knowing where you're at in life and, making decisions, being happy in the moment, but not satisfied. And then what he told you.
Well, I think I had already started.
You already started it?
So,
and I said, get back to that though, like this, a foundational.
Yeah. So basically just that this one kind of leads you into 10X is easier than 2X. But so one of the most transformational books that I have read that was really critical for me in my bodybuilding career, and it has nothing to do with bodybuilding, is Who, Not How by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. So one of the things it says is who's create abundance and self-expansion. And he gives the quote by Buddha, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So let me just kind of go into my story really quick of what we've done recently. For probably 2 years, I want to say maybe the last 2 years, especially the last year, Doug's always been my trainer, my coach, for bodybuilding. And we've really made some massive leaps in my career and what we've done. However,
3-time Miss Olympia figure masters, right? Yeah. And so you really did great.
Yeah. So in the last, I would say probably year especially, Doug kept saying to me, hire a coach, hire someone different than me. because it was getting increasingly difficult for me to follow the plan that he would lay out.
100.
And to follow it 100. Yeah. And it was also getting increasingly difficult for me to be able to separate husband from coach. And I actually believe it was really getting difficult for Doug to separate me from competitor, from wife. And because there's times that it's very difficult, bodybuilding, like anything we do, but bodybuilding can be very, very difficult. And there were moments where I just needed husband support, and Doug was trying to give coaching support. And so it just got to a point where it was getting increasingly difficult. Doug would beg me, just find a coach. And I was like, no, we can do it. And the reason I kept saying we could do it is because of the concept of what others might think if I hired a coach outside of, our relationship, because we've done it for so long. What would that mean to other people? Anyways, so what I did do from Doug's, input was hired a posing coach. Okay. So I had been following this bodybuilder online for a while, and she resonated really well with me. I just kind of liked her vibe. I liked the way she posed. She competes in a different organization than I do. I compete in the PNBA, which is a national organization, and she competes in the IFBB. And she's very good at what she does. So anyways, I followed her for a really long time, and I had hired her as my posing coach. I had set up a few sessions. I had already done one. It was fantastic. I was getting ready to do my next one. I was on the treadmill that morning before I was going to get on my call to go through posing.
And I was somewhere outside the country. So I can't remember.
You definitely weren't home.
Yeah.
I think, you definitely weren't home. Anyways, and so I am on the treadmill, and I am listening to Who Not How. And Benjamin Hardy says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And something just clicked in my brain. And I was like, I'm going to ask Autumn if she'll be my coach, not just my posing coach, but I want her to be my prep coach. I knew nothing about how she managed her prep clients, how it was done, what she would recommend, how she would do her nutrition. I knew nothing, but I knew I wanted her as my coach, right? So I get on my call for my posing. And mind you, she's getting close to Mr. Olympia. So she's made it to she's qualified for Mr. Olympia. It happens.
Olympia. Not Mr. Olympia.
For Olympia, yeah, for the Olympia. And it happens the week that I compete at World Cup. So she's in like full prep mode for her biggest bodybuilding competition of the year, and really not taking on new clients because of her schedule. I get on my posing call and I said, hey, how about we don't do posing today, and you tell me what it would take for you to be my prep coach? And she kind of sat there for a second, and she was like, listen, I just turned somebody down yesterday because I'm so busy. But she said, but because I know you are as far as along in your career as you are, let's talk about it. And so we took the rest of that call and just kind of discussed it. And when I approached her, I said, what do I have to do to make you my prep coach, even if it means next year? But I really want you now, basically. And so we did it. And whatever it took, we did it.
So the key, I think, with the book is that many times in life, you don't need more hows. How am I going to do this? And like, I got to figure things out. You need a who.
So let me just really read some of these. Who immediately connects you with different knowledge, insights, and capability. Who is about getting the desired result as effectively as possible. And then who expands your vision for what is possible, because you no longer see yourself as the sole means of achieving the result. And that was so important for both Doug and I in my bodybuilding career. It was I no longer had to play the blame game. He no longer had to, play the, am I going to get competitor right now, or am I going to get wife? Do I need to be emotionally supportive? Do I need to be, hard about what she's not quite doing right? And so it just opened up so many different possibilities. The other thing that I will say about this book is that it mentioned procrastination, and it gave me a different perspective on procrastination, because I have a tendency to procrastinate. Mm-hmm. And so I'll get off this really quickly, but I loved how he put this. So he says, procrastination is the byproduct of having a goal and asking how instead of asking who. Procrastination has many negative effects, such as decreased well being, frustration, and ultimately a loss of ambition. Paradoxically, how do you say that? Though procrastination is actually wisdom. It is your inner genius saying, this goal is amazing, but you're not the one to do everything involved. That's profound. So I freaking love that so much. So anyways, so who not how shifts your mindset into, instead of saying it's, you no longer have to draw from yourself this energy needed to accomplish the goal you need. You are investing yourself into a who that can help you get there. So you are no longer responsible for all of the ins and outs, the whys, the hows. You have a who that gives you that. And now all you have to do is execute. So what it did for me is I don't feel like I'm working harder. Do you think I am?
No, I think that you're just working smarter, and you're not putting more time in. You're just the quality because you're listening 100% to a who.
So it removed the pressure of like a crushing pressure and added a motivating pressure.
Absolutely. And I think that, this weekend too, we were training a bunch of doctors that came in from all over the nation on blood work and all of that. And halfway through the training, it's a 4-day training, and we're just like halfway through that, like 3.5. And I stopped, and like they need to know about who, not how, and kind of really get that. And it was a real profound moment because one of the doctors said, man, really who you guys are, your company, Optimal Health Systems, and that, you are who, because all you're doing is putting systems together so that we can easily follow them to help our patients get better, to be able to reach optimal health, to do all these things. And I'm like, yeah, I've been saying that for years, but it didn't resonate until like just laid it out there. Is it our jobs to be the who, right? To be the who for people to be able to be confident in that what they're asked to do, they could just follow it and get there like you are with now the poly coaching. You can be 100 and be able to make that happen. So super, super awesome. And it does make it better on the personalities too, right? Like we can be husband and wife and still be a coach sometimes, but a lot of times now I'm like referring to, hey, what would she have you do?
Okay, actually, and that kind of leads me into what is so great about this is I feel like it's allowed Doug to be more of who he's been for me always, and that's more of a mentor and my trainer in the gym, which we do really well at. I feel like we're really copacetic in that way. And so it's taken the pressure off of him of trying to make sure I'm following all of these things. And then instead he gets to just say, well, what would Autumn say? And so it's just who, not how is profound. He also says it's transformational. He also says in this book, if you have enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. And it kind of is just going to the fact of like, how many times do we try to do something all ourselves to save a few dollars, when if you just will hire someone to help you, you eventually or pretty much save the money that it would have cost. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and it also goes to, there's this podcast, but why should we strive to be as financially independent as possible, and that freedom for that? It really comes down to, that's the main thing is a lot of times there's problems that a lot of times money can solve because of a who. That you just need a who that could come in and take care of that, and it solves the problem. So it's not like the money creates happiness, but it does create the ability for you to solve problems many times quicker, that then allows happiness to be there and more joy and being in the moment. So super cool. We spent a lot of time on that one.
Sorry.
It's really transformational. No, I like it. So now,
we need to wrap it up.
And so this one is, we talk about fiction, nonfiction books. One of my favorite types of writing is historical fiction. And that's where the history is perfect, right? Like it's exact and like to the detail, right? The data's there, but then the people are made up to be able to get a point across. And Dan Brown, master at this. And so it's like self-help, but in a really cool way. This book's called The Lost Symbol. And The Lost Symbol is a phenomenal book. People that think of Dan Brown, that you think of some of his other work, Bork, Da Vinci Code, things like that. They made movies out of them. But this one really didn't get to be that popular, and it's my favorite. It's called The Lost Symbol, and it really goes through a lot of things about in Washington, D.C., talking about what's the group that it talked about a lot, going through
Mason?
the Masons, Freemasons, things like that, but more of just kind of helping to explain a principle. And at the end, it's like you don't see it coming, but it explains really what the most important principle is. It's usually right in front of you, and it's really really cool. But so I don't want to give it away, but read a lot of symbol. It's one of those things you can get into,
And it also
and help you with just being able to think about what's most important in life through a cool story.
and like founding fathers and what their purpose in creating, a free country was, and that kind of thing too, right?
And it'll make you want to go to Washington D.C. and look at it a lot differently. So
And we
that's
still need to do that. So those are pretty much my books. I did want to mention this one. This one is by Doug's dad. It's called Shot Down But Not Defeated. And like I said earlier, I love a good story of a hero. Doug's dad fought in World War II and was shot down over Germany and was a prisoner of war. And this book is all about his determination and his unwavering knowledge that he would survive, because he was before the war, he was given a blessing, and the blessing spoke about his future wife and his future children, and he was not married yet and he had no children yet. So he knew he would get through it because he had not yet had a wife and children. And what makes that so amazing and what makes it applicable to us is the importance of having future goals and being persistent and committed to them. And this book was just really cool. All the things your dad went through and still maintained a positive outlook in the worst of circumstances.
And a lot of people refer to a book by Viktor Frankl that had some of the similar experiences. But this one, obviously, being our family, being my dad, was more profound to us. But the cool thing about the way it was even written was completely accurate to the detail. Like I remember growing up, Dad wouldn't talk about a lot of things in public if he couldn't back it up. I'm like, Dad, people want to know the story. And he goes, yeah, but I don't have. It was just what happened, and there's no data on it. Like he was the first person to record shooting down a jet. Like jets were brand new back then. And because he had the record of it, through the Sperry sites and all that he had talked about it, but there's so much that he wouldn't. And we finally got him in the book to write down the whole experience. And it was about if your why is strong enough,
There you go.
right? And then it doesn't matter what comes to us. It's like, oh no, I know I needed to make it home. A stupid question like, what, how did you make it through all that? Through the minefields and being taken prisoner and being shot and everything you went through. And it's just a great way to end the podcast, because really, if you have your why, like what's most important in your life, your spouse, your family, your religious beliefs, hopefully your health, then it won't matter what comes along. You're going to bust through it because your why is strong enough. Your I am, if you would. And so super great. So these are some of our favorite books. There's a lot more. I think sometime we'll do one based on just health and a few things.
This is a different podcast.
And, hopefully let us know what you think about it, and
fun.
let us know if some of these books you read and it touches you too. So thanks so much. And as always, this is Miss Natural Olympia Hilary.
And this is the Formulator, Douglas.
Keep chewing.